that bird a duck. She went on to say this is not a hard case. All the textual evidence points to the same interpretation. A bump stock equipped semi-automatic rifle is a machine gun because a single pull of the trigger, a shooter can fire continuous shots without any human input beyond maintaining forward pressure. So there you see this real split, this vigorous split between the conservative justices on the court and the liberal justices on the court. And it really does also, I think, underscore that even a ban that was passed by former President Trump, who is now saying that he's going to respect this decision, it shows you that even in this case, the Supreme Court is saying that it was wrong to regulate bump stocks in the way that the ATF did, Jose.
And Katie, so what does this Supreme Court ruling tell you? And, you know, we're kind of reading through it and getting almost like the importance of every word in this decision. What does it tell you?
Well, as soon as the decision came out and I saw it was a Clarence Thomas issued decision, I knew it was going to be bad news. I mean, we are clearly in America that is gun culture and murder happy when it comes to guns. But putting that aside, what you see here is a conservative majority of 6 justices that are statutorily looking and interpreting a federal statute in a way that kind of conveniently works with what they want, meaning they're looking at a federal statute and they're reading it and they go very quickly in the majority opinion to say this is what the definition is of a machine gun as defined by Congress. And the majority says the bump stock does not, added to a rifle, make that rifle a machine gun as defined by federal statute. And the cop-out, Jose, that happens often with this conservative majority is the shrugging of the proverbial shoulders, where they say, if you don't like our ruling, if you don't like our decision, then Congress should actually go and do its job and amend the federal statute to include bump stocks. But what's fascinating is our very intrepid intern that's working with us this summer found in 2022, there was a case. There was a petition for writ of cert. And just to remind our viewers, Jose, what the Supreme Court doesn't take all cases that are coming before. It actually chooses certain cases to take. And so there was a petition for writ of cert on another decision.
What's writ of cert again?
So it basically wants the Supreme Court to take the case and issue a ruling to put it to finality, right? If there's a split in the circuits, meaning there's some type of disparity in the circuits. But in 2022, the Gun Owners of America Incorporated sued Merrick Garland. And what did they want? They wanted to actually see if the definition of this federal statute included bump stocks for machine guns. And the Supreme Court said, we're not taking this case in 2022. Now, there were some nuances, but the point is, these decisions that come out from the Supreme Court have exceptionally grave consequences because this is now the final law as interpreted by the Supreme Court. But again, it's how it's interpreted that is important. These conservative justices said, you know what? We don't want to actually cross the NRA. We don't want to cross the gun owners. We have Rahimi, which is still to be decided, maybe next week, Thursday or Friday. How are they going to look at that? Because I heard Leah Littman very smartly say in the prior hour, if Congress goes and they amend this federal statute, that doesn't mean that you're not going to see a challenge under the Second Amendment as to whether or not this bump stock addition to a rifle qualifies now under the statute as a machine gun. You're going to see this go back to the Supreme Court. And so right now, I think you see the Supreme Court end run that challenge in the future.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, Laura, in reference to the Las Vegas shooting in 2017, the court's majority opinion says an event that highlights the need to amend a law does not itself change the law's meaning. And that's what Katie was talking about, you know, how it is that they focus on what they decide to focus on. And so your reaction to this?
Look, there's no question that this is a conservative majority, a supermajority that was appointed by Donald Trump that does not believe that it is their role as justices to search for facts and then sort of tailor those facts to the law. They think they're there to just execute the plain version of the law. And they think that under this rule, a bump stock does not meet the definition of a machine gun. And so they're saying if Congress wants to do something about that and the people's representatives want to do something about that, by all means, go ahead. But they're not going to do it. They're not going to do lawmakers' job for them, is essentially what they're saying, Jose. And so even though it is the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history, the Vegas shooting that sort of was the outgrowth of what we think of the reason the bump stocks were banned in the first place. It's the reason that the former president was sort of spurned to take action about it, knowing how horrific that shooting was. For them, that's not enough, Jose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, Barbara, it is the Supreme Court talking about the difference between an ATF regulation and written law, including one that was the National Firearms Act of 1934.
Yeah, I think you have to squint to see the logic of Justice Thomas in this case. In 1934, when this was passed, it came in response to gangland murders by Al Capone and other gangsters who were using machine guns to mow down people with mass killings. And so Congress said there is no reason for civilians to have machine guns, which is why they were banned in 1934. And so fast forward years later, when we now have some technology that can convert a semi-automatic weapon, which is lawful, into a machine gun, and suddenly that's permissible. It's absolutely the opposite of what Congress said in 1934. But what Justice Thomas does with those diagrams in his majority opinion is says, if you look at it mechanically, it's not really a single pull of the trigger because the bump stock is doing the work of pulling the trigger. But what Justice Sotomayor says, when you're talking about pulling the trigger, you're talking about what the human is doing. And the human is only pulling the trigger once. And so with a logical reading of this statute, of course a bump stock is now converting a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun. And back to the logic of 1934, no civilian should be able to possess a gun that has this capability. So to me, this is just more evidence of two things. One is this Supreme Court's desire to end what they call the administrative state by giving agencies power to interpret statutes. And the other is the fetish that they have with guns.
And so, Katie, we were just talking about this before we were on the air. I mean, the whole concept and the debate that's been going on forever about strict constructionists versus people who interpret the law, including the circumstances of the time.
Yeah, so a lot of times conservative judges like to say, I'm a strict constructionist, meaning I look only at the language of the statute, which, by the way, is fine. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the fact that, to Barb's point, she said you have to kind of squint to see the logic from Justice Thomas, and that's totally true, but you don't have to squint to see the logic of the dissent from Justice Sotomayor, which Justices Kagan and Brown-Jackson joined in. If you look at the dissent, it clearly says, the same interpretation applies. A bump stock equipped semi-automatic rifle is a machine gun because with a single pull of the trigger, a shooter can fire continuous shots without any human input beyond maintaining forward pressure. And Jose, 90 rounds in only 10 seconds was the forensic evidence from that Las Vegas shooting. There is no human capability, right, of 90 rounds in only 10 seconds. The gun has to do it. And so that fits with the statutory definition of a machine gun. But again, it's the issue of convenience. Jose, can you interpret a federal statute in a way that works for you versus how it works for someone else? And I'm telling you right now, if we had had a majority on the quote-unquote liberal side, you would have seen a consistent ruling with the ATF. You have to give deference, Jose, to the ATF. What are they there for? What is that organization there for, that agency, if you're not going to give them deference for the rules that they promulgate? And
Yamiche, the Supreme Court, in its majority decision, talks about the fact that it's the responsibility of Congress to either create or amend laws. There's a political side to all of this.
There is certainly a political side to this, and it's interesting because this was passed, of course, under former President Donald Trump. This was his ATF that passed this ban, but you're hearing from people like President Biden and the Biden campaign, I should say, who are saying that this really underscores the dangers, they say, of gun culture in this country, and they are in some ways pushing to say we need more Democrats elected in order to regulate guns and to keep people safe here. On the Republican side, you're seeing Donald Trump and his campaign saying that they're going to respect this decision. They brought up the Second Amendment, even though this, talking to legal experts, this isn't a Second Amendment case. It was really an interpretation of the rules that the ATF was passing. But it does tell you that these are going to be the politics. Obviously, abortion is a big issue in the politics here as we go toward the presidential election, but so is guns. Talking to the vice president's office, while she's become a prominent voice on abortion, she's also having a number of events on guns and really highlighting sort of the dangers of mass shootings, including, of course, the one in 2017 where 58 people died in Las Vegas, which is really the impetus for why this ban went into effect. So you're going to hear more from Democrats saying, look, this is the Supreme Court that is not doing the right thing. You should be electing more Democrats, but definitely underscores the political issue here. Jose.
Yeah, both sides on this opinion go back to history and laws, something that they say laws are the ultimate arbiter of this issue. But, boy, so much to talk about. Yamiche Alcindor, Laura Jarrett, Katie Phang, and Barbara McQuaid, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. Up next, reaction from gun safety advocates is coming in fast. We're going to be hearing from Everytown for Gun Safety next. Plus, we'll talk about the ramifications of this decision with a retired ATF agent. We're back in 90 seconds. You're watching Jose Díaz-Balart Reports on MSNBC.
Tamara, Izzy, and Emma. They respond to emails with phone calls. And they don't circle back. They're already there. They wear business sneakers and pad their keyboards with something that makes their clickety-clacking clickety-clackier. But no one loves logistics as much as they do. You need Tamara, Izzy, and Emma. They need a retirement plan. Work with Principal so we can help you with a retirement and benefits plan that's right for your team. Let our expertise round out yours.
BK melts full of flame grilled layers. Meet the new Philly, it's stacked with flavor. Juicy beef and melty cheese. All these toppings will make you say sheesh. BK, have it your way.
In Formula E, absolutely anything can happen.
Oh, no!
This is the most competitive motorsport in the world.
Numbers. They never lie. You can add them, subtract them, multiply, or divide them, and they tell it like it is, whether you like it or not. Because numbers don't have opinions. They don't lean politically to the left or to the right. They might seem dry, but they tell very human stories. Stories about the candidates, about the voters, about the country. In the end, numbers tell stories that words alone can't. And when you look at the world through numbers, somehow, it all adds up.
14 past the hour, we're back with our breaking news. Last hour, the Supreme Court announced their decision overturning the Trump-era ban on gun bump stocks, which allow for hundreds of bullets to be fired per minute. Joining us now is Nick Suplina, Senior Vice President of Law and Policy at Everytown for Gun Safety. Nick, thank you very much for being with us this morning. What's your reaction to this ruling?
Well, I think we've once again seen from the Supreme Court a decision to go with politics over reason and public safety. We're disappointed in this decision. The Supreme Court had the opportunity to right the wrong of the Fifth Circuit's opinion, and it didn't take that opportunity. The fact of the matter is, right, we knew when we saw Justice Thomas' decision what this was going to look like. And the fact of the matter is that the Supreme Court will use whatever logic it needs to get to the political outcome it wants. This was not a textualist decision or an originalist decision. By the way, to comment on your conversation earlier, it is not even a Second Amendment decision at all. But what it is an outcome that a Trump Supreme Court ensured would happen while ATF is trying to keep dangerous guns off our streets, the same one that took 60 lives and injured 411 others in Las Vegas. The Supreme Court just put those weapons right back on our streets. So we are disappointed today, but we're ready to keep fighting to keep Americans safe.
And so how would that fight look like, and how would that fight change after today?
Well, look, there's no question that Congress can act here to fix this rule. But let's take a step back. Congress has already spoken on machine guns. It has said very clearly they have no place in civilian hands. So what the Supreme Court did today was really take action against the will of Congress and the will of the